Hi, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am delighted to be talking with the already, I can tell, very kind Lauren Tarshis. Lauren, thank you for jumping in and joining.
Thank you, Jason. You know, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time,
Yeah.
counting down.
Well, thank you. Thank you, as have I. Uh, of course, I Survived is the series that readers out there will know you best for. I think 22 books. Is that right?
Well,
Something like
as of yesterday, 23.
Well, fantastic. And happy
So
book
this is
birthday.
perfect. Yes, I'm celebrating my like sort of book birthday with you, Jason. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this is my party. So I'm very excited.
Well, I don't know that I'm the party person, the party planner, but thanks for celebrating with me, and glad to share about that out into the world of YouTube and Spotify and wherever this happens to wind up and land. So congratulations on that, another milestone in publishing. And before I hit record, I was telling you that I know your books to be very, very influential for young readers. I'm thinking about a grad student that I worked with a few years ago. Her name is Sarah Hudson. Hi, Sarah, if you're out there listening.
Hi, Sarah.
Um, and she used I Survived in an online virtual book club. With young readers, and so just a wonderful series for connecting with a range of readers.
Yeah. No, that's been one of the surprises, I think, Jason, is that it was 12 years ago that I had the idea for the series. And I never imagined, I thought it would be like maybe, we signed up, I signed up for 4 books and I thought, okay, I'll do them really quickly. Each one will take like 6 weeks to write. I'll bang them out. And then I'll move on because I had really started my writing, my children's writing career as more of like, I would say not to be grandiose, but like a more literary novelist, like quiet middle grade books that I love doing. Um, and I think everything about the series has been a huge surprise to me. The first is how hard they are to write.
Mhm.
They're just like each one is just a I don't want to use the maybe grueling is my editor Katie would totally say grueling is the right word. Not that it's without like lots of excitement and joy and learning and all of that, but the process itself, because to me, like historical fiction is almost writing 2 books where it's like, and I think it works as a metaphor to say it's almost like building a ship in a bottle, because I have that external narrative of the event, in this case, like the one that came out yesterday, the Great Alaska Earthquake. So learning everything about that and creating this sort of the plot of how that is, how I'm going to bring that to life in the book. And then inside that is a whole other story of the child, their family, their, what they come into the story, with no idea. Of course, they don't know what's to come in terms of what disaster is about to befall them.
Mhm,
They're deep, but they're always dealing with something. Like it could be anything from a nasty kid who lives on their block to, a brother who's fighting in the Navy SEALs and they don't know where he is, or a lot, parent grief, all these things. So putting those things together, proves to be, it's a much more challenging writing process. And then the other surprise is really just how they seem to resonate with a lot of kids. And
mhm,
as you said, I'm really amazed by the range of readers who, you know, I actually don't really think they're appropriate for very young readers at all. And I warn parents against like, no, no, no,
mhm,
it's
mhm.
not for your kindergartner, even if they're reading beautifully. Because of course, these are intense events, but I'll have kids who are second grade, third grade, and then I have a lot of high school kids,
Mhm.
and then even adult readers I'm learning, who are either new to the country, new to the language, or never really, were readers and knew about history. So that is like one of the really exciting surprises about it, even now, 12 years later, is that I get to connect with so many different people who are exploring the series at different times in their lives for different reasons and taking different things away from it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of connections, how did you decide on this path? How did this, or was it something that sort of happened to you? It's that connection to the written word sort of question of becoming
yeah.
an author.
Yeah, I thought, wait, oh, you sent me this question in advance. I was pondering it because it's like I could go many directions. My dad was a writer when I was growing up. In fact, you can see that behind, I don't know if you can see behind me. That's
Yeah.
his typewriter that he wrote
Oh,
a lot of
awesome.
his stuff. So he wrote nonfiction, for magazines mostly, about sports and travel. And he would be the first to tell you, I was just with him. Like it was not a good way of making money. We lived in
Mm,
a really small house, and my mom was a teacher, and that was kind of, that was our main means of support. And But I really was, I always thought it was I was always intrigued because I think what intrigued me was my father was always learning new things and meeting new people and going to new places. And that, more than like the written word part of it, it was this idea, I guess, of connection, of being able to connect in so many different ways. So I think that made impression on me. But I was I struggled to read. I did not actually successfully read a book until I was 14. That's a whole other story that I always share with the kids I meet.
mhm,
So the journey of getting to the point where I thought that I could become a writer, was long. And then at first it was really nonfiction, purely nonfiction. So then the idea of taking on fiction for children, I was 42 when my first book came out. And I started when I was 30. It was like right around my 30th birthday. I was like, I think I'd like to try to learn to write a novel for
mhm,
kids.
mhm,
Um, so, it took me a long time, I really did love I've always loved the process of learning things and then trying to convey what I'm learning, in a story. And that still is, I still get very excited about that process, as grueling as it is, and I survived. I think that is something that still gets me. Um, I find it fascinating and challenging in just the right way. There's always more to learn.
mhm, mhm. It sounds like it's a learning process for you, this work of authoring and sharing stories for young readers.
It is, and I think what's so fortunate for me is that it's like this gigantic, very complicated feedback loop
Hmm.
between my readers, and not just the readers, but teachers and librarians and people like you. As we were saying, like I love the fact that I'm a part of this ecosystem, and that I get to learn. I can either get a great idea from a reader, like this idea for the Great Alaska Earthquake. A
Hmm.
boy named Nathan wrote to me. I have very a lot of readers write to me with great ideas, and
Hmm.
I have pretty much followed their interests, over these years, over the 24 books. In between, well, anyway, Nathan wrote to me and he said, "Why haven't you written about the most powerful earthquake in American history?" I don't think his voice was really like that, but they're very, very studious and very like directive to me. And I was like, I did write about the most powerful earthquake in United States history. I wrote about the San Francisco earthquake. Um, I was thinking to myself, but then I checked because I could tell that Nathan knew what he was talking about. So I've read all your books, and it turned out that the Great Alaska Earthquake of 1964 was this like 9.2 earthquake that lasted for 4.5 minutes and launched tsunamis that were felt all the way, actually people in the coast of Oregon and California lost their lives,
Hmm.
and changed science forever, because that was the earthquake that led to the acceptance of the plate tectonics theory. So I wouldn't have I wouldn't have really, I don't think I would have, that wouldn't have really been on my radar in a serious way if it hadn't been for Nathan, this boy, writing to me from like Rapid City, Michigan. So just being in that feedback loop and getting to have these incredible conversations with kids who've read my books, and teachers, and hearing just what you said about Sarah, that
Hmm.
teachers are using them in so many ingenious ways. It just it's part of that, what really makes the writing process even more satisfying to me.
Yeah, I love that you're connected to readers in that way, and that first of all, you read the letters, but then that you're open to sort of hearing ideas and tailoring books for your audience. That's a very responsive move on your part. I love that.
Well, it's funny because I think when I first thought of the idea for this series, I thought I would only do long ago natural disasters because I really wanted the the frightening events to be at a remove from my readers. Like, oh, that could never happen here. This happened
Hmm.
in the 1800s. So it was like I thought, the blizzard that happened in 1888, or the Hawaii tsunami that happened in like 1950, I forget, 50 something. So I wanted these to be events that happened outside of my kids' lifetimes. But right away, I started getting emails and letters from kids telling me what to write about Katrina, 9/11, the Holocaust. And I was like, I would know, like, I would never write about these things, but thousands of kids and then lots of teachers and librarians, really encouraging me to take on different types of topics than I had first considered, because kids are curious about them.
Hmm.
And I decided to try to find a way to tell stories that weren't overwhelming to them or inappropriate in the intensity or complexity,
Hmm.
but that would sort of give them just enough so they would, they would be able to understand why they were important, how they shaped our world, and then help them, direct them, you know, when they were ready to learn more, where they
Yeah.
could go, sort of. So,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Um, Now, I know there's a lot of research that goes into what you do. And I'm also a person that gets the pleasure of teaching research. I get to guide high school students through the joys of research, and I've gotten to do that for graduate students and a variety of students over the years. Curious about what you would share about the importance of developing those skills.
well, to me, it's research. And I love, like, I get to I have friends and colleagues, peers who are also writing about, real events. So I love having conversations with like Kate Messner or Alan Gratz or Deborah Hopkinson. I like love to hear, and we all sort of have that same feeling that it's like treasure hunting in a way, because obviously you want to learn everything you can. So I do, for I'm currently, at the suggestion of my readers, at the, like, not suggestion, at the orders, I'm following the orders of my readers, that I'm writing about the Black Death for my next book. So I've been immersed in 1340s England. Very grim, I must say, Jason.
I am
Oh my gosh,
sure.
very, very, but also like so interesting. So, it's pretty much, no matter what the event is, even if, whether it's, an event, 2018 wildfires in California, or 1348 black, plague in England, it is really the same. The first process is just, kind of grounding yourself in the time, in the place, map, kind of creating the boundaries of the topic. So, what was happening and what else was happening, what was life like in the 1340s, who were the people. I mean, who could you be if you were a child? You could be the daughter of a knight or a nobleman. You could be the son of you know a tanner or a cobbler. You could be a peasant farmer. You could be living in your brother could be a monk. Your sister could be a nun.
Hmm.
You probably didn't leave your village. You didn't enter these woods, because it was this time of superstition and fear and goblins and all sorts
Hmm.
of things.
Hmm.
And then, for me, I always want to talk to academics and people who know a lot, other authors, and I travel to every place that I write about, except I didn't go down, luckily, to the bottom of the sea to see the Titanic. Not that wasn't an option, but that was not possible. And then
Yeah.
the only other place I didn't travel to out of the 23 books is to Japan, where the area where the Great Tohoku earthquake and tsunamis happened in 2018, because it was just too long a trip. I think, I
Mhm.
have 4 kids, and also a lot of those areas were still pretty shaken up by what happened, especially with the nuclear disaster that happened there. But
Mhm.
everywhere else I've gone to. So after all the reading and talking and studying and looking at maps and talking to experts, looking at paintings, diaries, all of that, going to the place, which I like to do really at the end of the process,
Mhm.
because I find that it's much more meaningful if I already have a mental image. There's something so exciting about like arriving in Galveston, Texas, where when I wrote about the 1900 hurricane there. And my mind is just filled with, I saw pictures and I read so much, and I heard voices of people whose stories I had read, these primary sources, and then to actually stand on the beach, and picture it.
Hmm.
It's a pretty, I just love that. I love that experience, going to Pompeii and walking in the footsteps of characters. So I think that for research, I think the importance of research is, part of it is that you always discover something that you never would have discovered. Well, I take that back. I'm always looking for things that are the incidental things that often trigger the entire plot. So an example is in the Alaska earthquake, I was, of course, struggling, as I always do, draft after draft, and this character, this character, this character, delete, 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 delete. And then I just couldn't figure out the catalyst for this story. And then I was reading this book, this wonderful book called The Last Frontiersman, nothing to do with the earthquake. It was just about this guy who later he appeared in this incredible documentary series called The Last Alaskans. I so recommend it.
Yeah.
But it was his life of growing up in Wisconsin and then moving to the bush of Alaska in the 70s and becoming, living, marrying an amazing Edna, who is a native Alaskan, and the two of them living in the Arctic National Refuge and really subsistence way. Anyway, there was a little vignette in that book that had nothing to do with the earthquake. It's just about something called a winter bear.
Mm-hmm.
Winter bear. Winter bear is a grizzly that wakes up from hibernation early and
Mm-hmm.
wakes up to a frozen world where there's no food, and they're incredibly dangerous. And
Yeah.
so I thought, well, that would be interesting. So I think if you are willing to research a little bit outside the boundaries of your topic, you can discover tidbits, vignettes, people that can really blow open your mind, your creative ideas. So that's I think that some people have said to me, well, do you have someone who helps you research? And I would love to, like the idea of like saying to a student, like a great college student, like, here's some money, go research the earthquake and then come back to me with like a beautiful Google Drive filled with
Mm-hmm.
pictures. But it really wouldn't work because it's in the searching for things and it's following tributaries
Yeah.
um, that and almost every single book. I mean, if we had like 6 hours and I could like somehow convince you to stay with me for all that time, we could go book to book and I could show you like in pretty much every single one. It was this kind of these incidental discoveries that ended up becoming a really important shaping element of the book or the character.
No, I love that idea of research as a story. Research is uncovering those parts of whatever topic it happens to be that aren't necessarily known and kind of putting those pieces together.
It's one research tip for your high schoolers, which
Mhm.
is a hidden gem, is that the New York Times has something called Times Machine. It's where they PDF'd every single newspaper, every page of every newspaper going back to the 1860s.
Oh,
So
wow.
what I do is, like, of course, I can't go back to 1340 for the Black Death, but for 1964 for the earthquake, and for every one of the books that are, after in the late 1800s and beyond, I spend, it gets a little bit much, and I do realize it edges into like pathological procrastination, but I'll sit and I'll really try to read, 6 months of those newspapers, and you look at the ads, you see the hats the ladies were wearing, you see what people were thinking about, what they were afraid of, who knew, like in the late 1800s to early 1900s, pretty much every day there was like a fire in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
People driving their motor cars right after, horses and carriages went away, and like everyone was like driving off of cliffs or slamming into buildings. And so you learn a lot about that's just like really fun for them. So no matter what they're writing about, what event, to look at, to just dive into that, and they get to almost feel as though they are in a time machine. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Well, as we're coming to the last question, curious about the spaces where people can follow along. You mentioned that book yesterday, book in development. You are a busy person, always writing, always working. Um, so curious about any next steps that you would also want to share with listeners.
well, if you're a teacher, I always want to make sure that teachers know that I have a huge, really enormous number of resources for every single book, for free, very like lovingly created by some of my teacher friends and myself, that are for every single book to enable you to, use them in whatever way you might want to use them in a classroom. And there's lots of videos and taking, behind the scenes of making each book, and research glimpses into the research journey. So that's something I always want teachers to know about, and for kids too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff for them. But and then the other thing is that while I'm doing the chapter books, this whole world of the graphic novels is taking
Hmm.
shape, that I
Hmm.
have, that I participate in. But that's really something that I'm also just like an odd observer to, as Georgia Ball, who is a graphic novel scriptwriter, who just adapts my stories into these beautiful, beautiful visual experiences. And then each book has been done by a different artist and colorist. So right now we're working on, we're finishing Pompeii. We have D-Day that's, I think, coming. I forget what's coming out next. And then we're starting. I just read the Molasses Flood script, and I think the next is the Tsunami. So they're putting out two of those a year, and that is
Yeah.
just a huge effort. So it's been fun, and it's been fun to see how kids toggle between the chapter books and the graphic novels.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And much love for the graphic novels that are out there as well. And I like that idea of toggling back and forth and reading one, reading the other, comparing. So yeah, yeah, wonderful work that you are doing and participating in.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank you
for
so
all you're
much.
doing as well.
My pleasure. My pleasure. As I said before I hit record, I like to do the things that I'm interested in, and I appreciate the time that you've spent with me.
Well, thank you so much. It was a delight.
Likewise, likewise, and glad to talk again sometime.
I hope so. We'll stay in touch. Have a good class tonight.
You too. Thanks. Or if you're having a class tonight, have
I
a
think
good night.
perhaps I would, perhaps I'll just throw together, like go present myself somewhere. So,
There it
all
is.
right. Take care, and do stay in touch. And I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.